Hello, I'm Malcolm Hazlitt. She's a woman with much experience in life and love, creating programs in festivals internationally and performing her favourite dance pieces. And we're meeting her next on OurTime. Welcome to OurTime. Our very special guest is performer and an amazing producer, Shakti. She's the dancing phoenix, sculpture in motion, the nymph of sensuality. She dances in the nude with an interpretation of full serenity, emotion and beauty to classical music. Now, I've seen now 3 of her performances, but she's here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's lovely to have you on the program. It's your second time.
Yes.
It's got to be nearly 2 years ago, I think, we talked. And I had no idea of your background at that time because we really only talked about running venues during the Adelaide Fringe. But you've got such an interesting backstory. And talking of backstories, let's go back to the beginning. Why are you called Shakti?
Well, my father is Indian and my mother's Japanese. And so I was born in Japan. And first of all, they wanted to kind of name me Shanti, which means peace in Indian.
Right.
But when I came out, I was not a peaceful little creature. I came out with a burst of energy.
That you still got,
yes,
I might say.
I am energetic. So they called me Shakti, and I live up to my name, I think.
You certainly do. So where did you begin dance? Was it in India or in Japan?
Well, actually, in my mother's stomach. Because my mother's a dancer. So she kind of danced me, I kind of danced out of her stomach. My mother's Japanese, but she's the first Japanese woman to bring Indian classical dance into Japan.
Oh, right. Okay, that's a really interesting journey. Why that rather than classical Japanese?
Well, first she used to do some classical Japanese dance, but she was always fascinated with India and the philosophy and the religion, and the dance was a devotion.
Yes.
It wasn't an entertainment.
Yes.
And she met my father, who was her professor at the Kyoto University of Foreign Studies. And he was a professor of English as well as a yogi. And so when they got together, they decided they'll introduce India into Japan.
How fascinating.
So he taught me yoga, she taught me dance.
Right. Now, one of our cameramen who's over there, he's also yogi. So we're all in good company.
Yes.
Today.
Yoga is a way of life.
Yeah, it is a way of life. So when did you start sort of formalising dance training? Were you a little girl or did that come as time went on?
No, I think really from when I was 3, as soon as I could walk, I started with, my mother started me with all the movement.
Oh, right.
And everything, and the stamps and everything. And my father started with the breathing of the yoga and the meditation. So it was part of life.
Right.
It was formalized because you had to do it every day. But like, we eat every day.
Yes.
We sleep every day. Of course we do yoga and dance every day.
Yes. Yes, I get that. I absolutely understand that. That's actually quite an interesting comment coming from you because a lot of people will say, probably to you as they do to me, you know, how do I become a performer? How do I become a dancer, an actor, a singer, or whatever? And the only real answer is unless you breathe that, unless you need to do that as much as breathe and eat, it's probably not going to happen for you.
It has to come into your blood. And then my mother always told me, like she was a dance teacher, it's not the 2-3 hours you're in the studio practicing that matters. It's what you do with the rest of the time.
And it's here. It's what's happening in
here.
Yes. No, I love hearing that because I think of all the things that performers do, whatever skill they specifically have, unless you have this burning desire to do it, it just doesn't really come across properly.
You wake up with it.
Yes.
And you go to sleep with it.
And your head is buzzing all the time with the excitement of being able to make your body do these things. Yeah. Okay, so you're 3 and you're working with your mum.
Yes.
When did it go into the professional world for you?
I had my first full solo recital, which we call in India Aramgetram, which is you do the full classical dance repertoire at
that classical Indian dance.
Indian dance, because I'm trained in classical Indian Hindu temple dance, Bharatanatyam, from the southern part of India.
Right.
And then that was at 16. I had my full solo recital, but I've been performing on stage since I was 5. My mother was a performer, and she gave me small parts
Yeah.
and so many. I just loved it.
It's such a familiar story. But having seen your work just recently in the Adelaide Fringe and seeing the control that you've got, it's clear that your body moves. It sounds a silly thing to say, but it moves as one. You can see that everything is connected perfectly together as you move. So you've also become, well, first of all, what brought you to Australia?
Well, I was performing at the Adelaide Fringe. I've been performing in the Adelaide Fringe since 1996. And when I was here in 2000, performing one of the Fringe venues, my husband now, who wasn't then my husband, was sitting in the center front row.
This is an amazing love story.
So that's the history.
But it really is an amazing love story because I've sat and watched you dance too, but I wouldn't have thought of coming up and saying, hey, I'm looking for a wife at the moment. You available? How did it happen? How did he get to know you?
But he wrote me an email saying how much he enjoyed my show, and also he enjoyed the words I said at the end.
At the end, yes.
Because I'll just do a little bit of Shakti philosophy at the end. And then it was very much of a coincidence. That was in March in Adelaide. And in May, I had a performance at the International Centre for Arts in London.
Right.
And, I just wrote back to him, I'm glad you enjoyed my show here. Well, if you're in London in May, I have a premiere of The Woman in the Dunes. And he was in London in May. With his work, he's a scientist, an environmental scientist, so he was in London flying his airplane doing some research in May. So it was almost like fate brought us together.
Do you believe in that? Do you believe in fate?
I do.
Because that's sort of a perfect example, isn't it? That's
It
amazing.
is. And fate always happens, but fate gives you the opportunity. It's your choice to grasp it or not.
Yes, I agree with that. My philosophy is say yes to everything because you never know what's going to come. I mean, within reason, I guess.
Yeah.
But you don't know what adventure that's going to take you on because you could end up anywhere doing anything.
Exactly. And here I am.
And here you are. So where does your inspiration come from? Was there a point in your life that you thought, right, I'm going to create my own work. Now I'm going to become an entrepreneur and I'm going to pull other artists together. I'm going to book venues. I'm going to do publicity.
Because all my life, I've just been doing dance and yogas. I've been performing, and we've been performing in major venues like Lincoln Center in New York, Palais de Versailles in Paris, Russia Concert Hall, Kiev Center, Kiev Theater, Lenin Theater in Kiev. So we've done major big theaters.
When we say we, this is with your company.
Yes, with my company and my mother as a director and with my company. And then I discovered also the Fringe in Edinburgh, and I thought that was fascinating. It's this place where you go and do your own thing. And nobody can tell you what to do. Of course, sponsors are good too, but then when you have sponsors, you have obligations.
Yes.
In the Fringe, you were free. And the chaos fascinated me. And I started with that. And then I started Edinburgh Fringe in 1994. And I was there, and I went into the university first. And
with a one-woman show or with a company?
With my company, four dancers from Japan.
Right.
And then I went in some of the major venues like Assembly and the Plaisance and the Graffiti. And then the last time I performed at the Graffiti, they didn't pay my box office money. They went broke and they didn't pay my box office money. And that was around 30 years ago, and a lot of money. And I was in shock. And I thought, that will never happen again. So the next year in Edinburgh, I started my own venue, and I declared artists will be always paid.
See, now that's interesting because a lot of the public wouldn't understand how this works. In fringes, I think it's been sort of cleaned up now around the world, but quite often performers do their best work and then
you don't get.
Well, I had to pay to come here. I had to hire the venue. I had to accommodate everybody. All of these things had to happen, and that reflection is in the ticket price.
Yes, and you don't, take the ticket price for your pocket. You use the ticket price to pay for everything.
That you need. Yes, exactly. Just talking about fringes, because that's what we talked about last time you were on. Have you seen them change? Have you seen the whole concept of fringes around the world? Because now Edinburgh is the biggest, Adelaide has the second largest, but there are fringes really now all around the
Everywhere in the
world.
world.
So somebody who maybe starts in Edinburgh could go to Japan or somewhere in Asia.
But now there's more of a network with the fringes, like the World Fringe. So there are small fringes popping up everywhere. And, you know, Edinburgh is a classic. I think it's too big, personally. And then Adelaide, this year was great. I think somehow or another, if it's too big, the audience is the same.
There's only so many
There's
people that can come and see something.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
I agree.
I think, like, you know, you don't want to cap, I understand that, but somehow or another, to have chance for all the artists, I think it has to have some kind of balance there.
We were very lucky this year because
Yes.
most of the performers were Australian.
Yes.
And from all different states, of course. But it really was a pride of looking at the people who live in the country
Yes.
and work in the country. And I think for the general public, it gave them the understanding that there's the best in the world here too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's international enough here.
Yes.
And everybody should have a chance. And then you can dig out such amazing
You
people.
can find absolute gems. We have to take a short break to find another gem, and we'll be back in a tick. Welcome back. Our special guest is Shakti, the impresario extraordinaire. Is that a good description of you?
I think I like it.
Yes, because you do so much on both sides of the scene.
Well, I have to keep out of trouble.
We were talking before about the fact that you live in the Adelaide Hills and you've just been inundated with 2 years of fire.
2015, we were caught in a Samson Flat fire. And 2019, we were caught in a Cutley Creek fire. So this 30% of this side was burnt of our property, and this year 30% of that side was burnt.
Frightening, isn't it? Did that inspire you to do a dance?
Exactly, but it is really strange. And we were talking about fate. This is also fate. In 2015, that was January 2nd was the Samson's Flat Fire. So the Fringe registration deadline was a couple months before, probably in October, November.
Yep.
So I did a show called Appassionata, Phoenix Rising. That's, I was going to do one with earthquake, flood, and fire. I've known earthquakes because I live in Japan, and I've known floods also because monsoon, I've lived in India. But I've never known fire. But then that was an imagination. Then, fair enough, January 2nd, the
There it
fire
was.
came right to my property.
It's frightening, isn't it? It's really frightening.
But the more interesting thing is 2019, there was a Cutley Creek fire. 2 months before was a deadline for the Fringe. So what show did I do? I did a show, Appassionata, which is Beethoven's Piano Sonata Appassionata, the full concerto. I did that. And we got the Cutley Creek fire. So it seems like my Appassionata, my passion, calls the fire.
Well, we're going to just show a couple of shots of you performing. This first shot comes from the Fringe, and that's one of your dancers.
This is Appassionata.
No, it's you.
Yes, this is
They're
me.
both you.
Yes.
I've just realised that. And clearly, you're not wearing anything in that photo. Let's have a look at the next one. This is from the season that you've just completed,
Just 2 weeks ago.
where you literally are dancing without a costume on.
Oh no, my body's my costume.
Ah, I'm glad you said that. And your hair too in this particular shot. Now, it's unusual to dance nude, and I saw your show, but it wasn't that unusual.
It's natural.
It is, and there's no restriction. That was the amazing thing. And before long, you sort of forgot that you weren't wearing a costume. You just looked at the interpretation of your body, and the choices of music that you used were so powerful that honestly, you just sort of melted in. Our brains melted into what we were watching. With the audio and the vision, it was quite an amazing experience. I've never seen anybody work like this before. That's the first time I've seen anybody do what you do. And it is unique. And you call this your signature piece, don't you? So where did this come from?
Well, it started, I think, around 15 years ago when my husband and I were just playing around in our studio in Japan. And we were just playing around with images and things. And then the whole concept started. this is nature, this is natural. And it's the eternal Western classical music that everybody knows and everybody loves. And it's the Indian dance movements I've taken from the sculptures in the Hindu temples and everything.
Right.
And it shows the beauty of the body and also has a very human aspect. It's not ethereal, maybe like ballet, but then it's very earthy and very human. And I thought the combination of East and the West, a marriage of the Western music and the Eastern movements,
Right.
would be perfect.
But also the lighting that you used and the way that highlighted the body, it was absolutely unique.
And my husband, he does all the lighting.
Ah, right, right. It's not at home with a torch though. When you're practicing, put a torch over there. We've got another shot of you from, I think it's last year's Fringe, and this is like a time exposure where you can see the costume working for you. Looks great.
That's the swirl of the movements. Because if I'm not wearing anything, I like fabric. The way it's part of my body as well.
Yes, and you use it very effectively. Here's another shot. It almost looks like you're in a wave, surfing through what do you call the middle of the wave? There's a word for that. As you come through yes. And everyone at home has just thought, oh, yes, we know what he means. No, just brilliant. I loved it. This year you did something else. You combined with a local pianist.
Yes, Riccardo Barone, an Italian pianist.
And he was amazing, and your interpretation of the music he'd created.
And, we didn't get together before the show. He created the music. I created the dance right there. Because it's like the music is his words.
Yes.
The dance is my words. Movement's my words. You converse. I can't rehearse what I'm going to talk to you now.
No. Quite.
So I know grammar, I know vocabulary.
Right. So that whole performance piece you were instigating as you were listening to the music. But he had written the music.
He had composed it.
And it was brilliant, I must say. And what you did with it, because you used a lot of fabric and again, lighting, well, isn't that great? It's great that your husband can combine with you on that aspect as well.
Because when I'm doing the Fringe and when I'm doing my shows, he's always there to light me and to make the sound good and everything.
Right.
And when my husband's a scientist with Airborne Research Australia, so when he does environmental studies and surveys in the small two-seater airplane all over Australia, I'm sitting next to him running the laser, the hyperspectral, all the scanners and everything.
How extraordinary.
So it's a marriage of art and science.
How amazing. That's wonderful. Do you get back to Japan very often?
I try to go back. I have been going back every 3 or 4 times a year till last year because of the pandemic. Because my dance company's in Japan. They still are there, And so I still train with them, except for now it's through Zoom. But my dance company has been with me for over 30 years. So we're one. So even if you practice apart, when you come together, there's no trouble.
No, I understand that. I do understand that. And there's a language that you can use that you all understand. So it's easy. Yeah, that's amazing. So what are you going to do when you grow up?
I don't think I'll ever grow up.
Who wants to? But now this other side to what you do, which is the collating of other performers to come together for a festival. You had a venue here in Adelaide, which is behind the town hall.
It's the Garage International at Adelaide Town Hall.
There you go. And the lovely thing about the old building is that it is an old building. It's the original, I think it's a Pilgrim Church, is that what it's called?
The Pilgrim Church is right behind. So the church is separated, but I think it was called the Pilgrim Meeting Hall before.
A meeting hall.
But then it looks like an old church.
Yes, it does. And I think it predates the Adelaide City Town Hall as well. So it was probably where the founding fathers met originally.
It's an ancient building. It's heritage listed. It's
Yes.
high ceiling with brilliant acoustics.
Yes, it has. It has. And it holds about 150 people.
But COVID, 75.
I know. This year we were all on 50% or we're wearing masks. But how did that affect the festival, the restriction? Did you feel that there was a restriction?
No, because I think 75 is plenty for the Fringe. And then because you seat every other seat, everybody gets a good view. You could relax and see a show.
Yes, you didn't have people sitting, breathing either side
I
of
find it, sometimes like with Classic Nude, the show you saw, next year I'm thinking of doing it again. I'd like to run it again, but restricting the audience to 30.
Okay.
I want people to
But
see it calm and quietly.
But you did about 40 minutes. You had a break for about 20 minutes or something. Then you did another 40 minutes. And you did that every night almost. Weren't you exhausted? And you were looking after all the other performers that were there as well.
Not at all. It's exhilarating.
Yes, well, I understand that.
You know that. I know
I do understand that. But still, after the Fringe is over, you think,
After Fringe is over, okay, what's next Fringe? Okay, I'm already trying to recruit companies. And Avignon, I'll always go to Avignon in southern France in July. Last year was the first time in 25 years I couldn't go there.
right.
And this year...
Because you would normally travel
Yeah.
a good portion of those Fringes
Yes.
throughout the world. Do you feel that life in a suitcase suits a dancer?
No, you need a home, but you have to travel. So it's not a life in a suitcase. I always have my beautiful property in Gumrak to come back to.
Sure, but finding a space to rehearse, finding a space to do your daily stretching isn't always as easy. I remember travelling with other companies myself and having to use like a convention room in a hotel with a carpeted floor to do warm-ups and whatever. And it wasn't the same. Do you know what I mean? It's not like a studio with mirrors
like
that you can check yourself and make sure
But it
that
doesn't
everything...
bother me.
Doesn't bother you?
Because I think I've been doing it so long that, but then you have too, but then hotel room, on the bed, under the bed, you know, in the shower, whatever, you could easily stretch.
Yes, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Because
Shakti,
that's the
we
only
have
way
to
to
take
do it.
another quick break
Okay.
and we'll be back in just a tick. There's so much more about this lady to tell you. A special guest on this program has been the international dancer Shakti. Now, we get to a point in life where we can't do it like we used to anymore. And then you've got a couple of choices. Do I just close down or do I hand over what I've learnt in life to somebody else? Where do you feel you are?
Now you say, we can't do it as we used to. So you do it differently. Why stop?
Well, true. I'm still doing this.
See? And I also find that I could do movements now with much more easily than I did. I could do when I was 20.
Right.
I could do backbends forever because I just give up. You got to do it 20, 30, 40. You know, when you were younger, you get tired easier.
You keep pushing yourself to keep your body in that sort
And I
of shape.
think also you learn a discipline.
Yes.
When you're younger, you have full of energy, you burst it, but you also go to
Yes.
sleep.
Yes.
Well, here, if you don't have time to sleep, well, we'll sleep next month. You get wiser as you grow older.
Yeah, I understand what you meant by that. But with your company, you can still choreograph and still
Yes.
pass on some of the things you've learned. Not all of the things you've learned, because the best people in the world have a uniqueness that nobody can really copy.
Because I don't think I can pass on what I do. I could pass on my energy. I could pass on my passion. And maybe I could pass on this motive that, look, see what I did with me. You can do that with you, your way.
Well, an interesting thing, Indigo, who's our floor manager here at the moment, who's winding us up, was just saying in the break, you have such wonderful energy. She felt inspired. But that is the wonderful thing. You definitely have that give that makes people feel just
You can
happy.
do it. You can
Happy
do
in
it.
your presence. That's what it is.
Thank you.
I'm so pleased we had a chance to chat. It's been lovely to talk to you properly for the first time, rather than talk about the business side, talk about the performer. And many years of performing ahead of you, and congratulations on what you've achieved so far. And I love the fact that you live here in Adelaide, in the Adelaide Hills.
You must come visit me
I will,
sometime.
but citizen of the world, that's what you should be called.
Universe.
Universe. Oh, first performance on Mars coming up soon. Hey, it's been great to have your company this time on OurTime. Until next time, keep yourself nice till then. See ya.